Hello, my name is Sean Whipke. I am a senior sales engineer with Qmulos. Today we're going to walk through a demonstration of both of Qmulos' apps, QCompliance and Q-Audit. These are our premium Splunk apps. They sit on a separate search head or search head cluster and look into your indexers for the data to help see how you're doing with compliance or with auditing depending on the app that you're using. Both apps can be found on Splunk base, but you can't get them there. You do have to come to us or one of our partners in order to get the apps. Both apps can sit on the same search head or search head cluster, but they must run separately from other large apps, especially enterprise security. We can't run on the same search head as enterprise security. I'm going to start with QCompliance. We'll walk through QCompliance starting at a very high level, looking at the organization as a whole, and then we'll dive down to a single specific system and then down to one control that's been applied to that system. We'll look at the different statuses and findings that we can have for the audits and assessments on that control. We'll look at the different types of evidence that we track for that control and how we can automate based off the technical evidence. After that, we'll take a little bit of a look at the system level, looking at authorization, continuous monitoring, alerts, and reporting. We'll end by looking at a little bit of the configuration of QCompliance, as well as how we can do a health check on the visualizations that we have. After QCompliance, we'll walk through Q-Audit. That will only take us a few minutes because Q-Audit is a very focused app. It's all about the Intelligence Community Standard 500-27. We'll take a look at how we can summarize the auditing that we're doing, the different event families that we track, how we can do investigations into users and endpoints, and then finally how we can also do some risk scoring based off the events that we're auditing. If you have any questions about this demo, about things that you've seen here, feel free to email us at sales@qmulos.com, and we're more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. So I'm starting with QCompliance. We're in QCompliance right now at the main page. I'm going to go to the organization overview. Within QCompliance, what we do is set up an organization with any number of levels of sub-organizations. As you can see here, I have my global organization Qmulos with 3 sub-organizations. Those sub-organizations can have their own sub-organizations and as complicated or intricate as we need to make it in order to model it after your own organization. At every level of the organization, we're going to have systems. Systems are collections of assets, and that's the level that we apply the controls against. Assets can be in more than one system, and you can define systems pretty much any way that you might want to. For example, they can be defined by IP address. They can be defined by accreditation boundary. They can be defined by what role the endpoints have in the environment. You can also see at the top of the screen here the score type. We're looking at the assessment scores. We track both assessment and audit scores for all of the controls. We typically define assessment as an internal review. You're taking a look at yourself and determining whether or not you're in compliance. Auditing, we typically define as an external review. Another agency comes in to take a look and see how you're doing. But here we're looking at the organization as a whole, all the systems there. We're seeing our scores for our assessment scores right now, seeing our historic trends broken down by sub-organization, even broken down by control category. If we want any more information on any of these visualizations, we just need to click on them. That's something you're going to see as we go through both QCompliance and Q-Audit today, is the fact that you don't need to know Splunk in order to use them. You don't have to know SPL. We've written the searches for you. That being said, if you do know Splunk, you can customize pretty much everything that you see. The panels, the dashboards, you can create your own visualizations to add to dashboards. It's all based off the data models that we use in order to run our analytics. We tag the data that you have at search time and add it to specific data models so that it can be searched in an accelerated format and create our visualizations. But here we're looking at the systems that are part of our global organization. We're seeing our true assessment scores here in a green versus red, pass versus failing. And it gives us an idea of where we might want to direct our resources. A couple of our systems here are completely not reviewed. One's only partially reviewed, and then the rest have different levels of passing versus failing. I'm going to click on the Windows system. You'll see here in the upper left, it now shows the organization and system. We're looking at the Windows system and the Qmulos organization. This is a collection of Windows assets in my demo environment. So here we're looking at the assessment scores for it. We're seeing the different control libraries that we have applied to the system. Out of the box, we have support for 4 different control libraries. That is NIST 853 Rev 4, which was what we were originally built around, NIST 853 Rev 5, CMMC, and CDM. We also have the ability to do custom control libraries as necessary, depending on which mandates you might have to follow. A number of our customers have asked us to create control libraries based off the mandates that they need. I'm going to dive down into one control category, the AC family. Take a look at the audit and assessment scores for the control and control enhancements here. At the top, I see AC2, which is account management. And I see that the audit and assessment status is set to failed for both of those. So I want to look into it a little closer. Again, I don't need to write any searches. I just need to click on the visualization to get down into it. This takes us into the Control Compliance Hub. Every single control in QCompliance has one of these pages. This is where we track the audit and assessment status for the control. This is also where we track the different types of evidence for it. In a way, it's the nuts and bolts of QCompliance. So here we see the control selection. We see which control enhancements we have applied, which ones are passing and which ones are failing. And then we see the audit and assessment status. If I click on the status, it's going to bring up a timestamp record of all the audit findings and statuses or assessment findings and statuses that we've had since we installed QCompliance. In this case, going back over 4 years. I can see what my audit finding is. I see the status, who audited me, and when this audit occurred. If I scroll down, I'm going to see the control requirements as they're written by NIST with organization-defined parameters. I see the supplemental guidance and even the related controls to this one. If I scroll back up, if I had already reviewed the evidence, I could perhaps add a new audit finding and status here. I can do that because I have the role of auditor. We expand on Splunk's role-based access control and add additional roles for the different duties that people might need inside of QCompliance. An auditor, for example, can set the audit finding and status, but would not be able to upload any additional evidence or do other types of reporting. Every role is defined in our support site, so you can give just the roles that are needed for people to maintain their duties inside of QCompliance. Similarly, we also map users to specific organizations, so you only see the data that you need to be able to see. I'm mapped to the Qmulos organization. I can see all the sub-organizations. If I was mapped to the Qmulos DC sub-organization, I wouldn't be able to see Qmulos CA or Qmulos NM. So that's how we can manually set the audit or assessment status for the control. But we can automate that control status based off the technical evidence that we have. So here I'm looking at the technical evidence for control AC2, which is account management. I'm seeing accounts managed, created, deleted, disabled, account management over time, top account managers by action, top actions by account type. If I had any questions about what I'm looking at, I can click on the question mark and it will tell me exactly what this visualization is. I can also look at security scan statistics. So if I click on that, it's going to open up my SCAP dashboard and show me the security scan results for, in this case, the STIGs that we're looking at for Windows 8. If I click on one of the rule results, it's going to show me what the rule is and which assets are affected by it. This SCAP information can come from Tenable, Nessus, ACAS, and can be ingested directly into QCompliance. But as I mentioned, we can always get more details by clicking on the visualization, and we can use that to also automate what we're looking at. So say I have a policy that no account should be deleted, accounts should only be disabled. Well, if I'm looking at these visualizations, I'm not in compliance with that policy because I have 154 accounts deleted. I could click on the actions by account type and look at the deleted actions and see the raw events behind them. Which users are deleting which other users. But I can also take action based off of it. So say I want to automate my control status. I want my control to be failing if any accounts are deleted. I can go to Create QCompliance Alert in the toolbar. If I click on it, it's going to take me into the Technical Alerts Management page that we have. This is basically a filter on top of Splunk's alerting capabilities. We filter the alerts based off the organization and system. So you're not having to deal with hundreds of Splunk alerts to find just the specific one you need. We're looking only at the ones that affect this system. And we've auto-populated the search with the search that we clicked on. So in this case, the search looking for deleted accounts. I can set the title, the description. I can change the cron schedule to run every morning at 6 a.m. I can see which controls it applies to. In this case, it applies to control AC2. And then I can take additional actions. So if you're familiar with Splunk alerts, you know that there's a number of actions you can take based off of the alert. You can send an email, you can run a script, etc. We've added additional actions that you can take based off of QCompliance. So first off, automatically, it's going to log a control alert. I'm going to say that this should be a high alert if any accounts are deleted. And then there are other actions I can take here. I can add a control record, I can set the test case status, I can create a plan of actions and milestones based off this technical evidence. But what I want to do is set the control status. I want to say both the audit and assessment status is going to be set to failed because accounts were deleted. And what this means is this alert will run at 6 a.m. If it finds any deleted accounts, it's going to automatically fail the control. This is how we help align your compliance with your operational security. Because if you left the office on Monday afternoon at 5 o'clock and this control was passing, and you came into the morning, Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock, and all of a sudden the control is failing, you're going to know that an alert went off. Something happened. You're going to be able to click back into the visualizations and look at these deleted account actions. You're going to be able to look up what's going on. And it's going to give you an idea in case there's something malicious happening. Is somebody trying to hide their tracks about something? Or is somebody just not properly trained? But you can take any of these actions based off of any of the technical evidence that we have, or also based off the scoring. You can take these actions and do what you need to in order to track the control status, to do the POAMs, the test cases, etc. But we do track more than just the technical evidence. Down here we have our assigned evidence panel. This is where we track documents and other artifacts that might be related. So AC2, we might have a user list. We can choose a file and upload it to the search head and save it on there where we can look at it. We can also provide an evidence link to a website such as SharePoint or Google Docs where we're versioning the documents. We also track human activity. In this panel, we track control records, POAMs, test procedures, and implementation statements. Control records show when somebody has taken a look at the control, and they can be created in a number of different ways. As you just saw, they can be created through an alert action. We can also click on the green Add Record button and add a note, and it will leave a time-stamped record that we were here and took a look at this control. You also see where it says Monitor Technical Indicators for Control AC2. That actually came from our continuous monitoring dashboard. Somebody clicked on the control there, viewed the technical evidence, it automatically created a control record to show that they did that. Working with POAMs will also create control records. We can view, edit, delete POAMs. We track them on a per control basis. We can also manually add POAMs as necessary. We have a number of other dashboards for POAMs that you'll see as we go through. We have an executive overview for POAMs where you can view them by the entire organization. And then we have a POAM dashboard where we can see just the POAMs for our specific system. We track test procedures and implementation statements as well. Test cases can be automatically updated through alert actions, and we can go down to the CCI level if necessary. The test procedures and implementation statements will show up in some of the other reporting that you'll see in a few minutes. So that's just one way that we can get down to assessing the control, which is step 4 of the risk management framework. We didn't have to go the route that I took to get here. If we knew which control we wanted to view, we could have gone under Investigate Controls and gone directly to it. We also provide a number of framework scorecards, which basically follow different mandates and give you a scorecard based off the controls that make up that mandate. So we can take a look at the compliance scorecard for CMMC, for example, and get an idea of how we're doing for the different levels of CMMC and the process and practice categories for both of those. So step 4, assessing the control, we've just taken a look at. Now we're going to take a look at step 5, which is system authorization. So we're looking at the authorization of our system. This is where we track it. We can see our status. We can see what the terms and conditions are. We can see past authorizations. We can see our assessment information. How are we doing in terms of our assessment scores? A color-coded grid of all the controls and whether they're passing or failing, as well as POAM information and documentation related to our authorization. So having reviewed this, and if I have the role of authorizing official, I can click on Add New Authorization and add a new authorization here. We can also automate the authorizations, typically based off the true assessment score. What we do is set up an alert action like you saw before. And we say if this score goes above a certain number, say 75%, give me an authorization for another week or another month. And if this score drops below another number, like perhaps 60%, automatically rescind my authorization. Moving on to step 6, which is monitoring. We have a continuous monitoring dashboard, which is completely customizable. We're looking at this monitoring frequency here. Notice it's set to 1 day. These are the technical controls that we want to monitor on a daily basis. So we can see here in real time, are we passing or are we failing our controls? We're looking at the assessment scores again, so we can see which ones are passing and which ones are failing. And if we want to look into it further, we can click on the control to get more information. So I clicked on CM8, which is Information System Component Inventory. It's going to show me the technical evidence for the control. It's also going to automatically create that control record to say that I monitor the technical indicators for the control. Here, I might be able to get a good idea of why this control is failing. For example, I see my authorized assets and my authorized software here. And when I look down to the discovered software, I see Adobe Flash. I know that that's not actually on the authorized software list, so that's probably why the control is failing. If I want to look into it a little further, I can go to the System Actions page. It's going to show me items requiring action as well as compliance indicators. But I'm going to see alerts that have been triggered, failing audits and assessments, overdue items. And if I click on the alerts, I'm going to see that at 3 o'clock in the morning, an unauthorized software alert went off for CM8. I can open this up in a search and see what it's reporting. Again, I did not have to write the search. It's already written for me. And here's that Adobe Flash. I can also create a ticket for it. We have a ticketing system built into QCompliance that helps you remediate these alerts and track the workflow for them. I can also delete the alert if necessary, and it will create a control record to say that I deleted the related alert. If I look at the compliance status, I'm going to see CM8 at 3 o'clock in the morning failed its audit and assessment. I can look at the control activity, and I can see that I monitored the technical indicators for CM8 a couple of minutes ago, and a few minutes before that I monitored the control for AC2. I can see what the latest control records are. This is where we have a POAM dashboard. So all the POAMs for our system. I can add a POAM here, or I can click on the POAM to dive into it and take a look at it. This is also where I view the schedule for my controls. How often do they need to be audited? How often they need to be assessed? And how often they need to be reviewed? And I can set up alerts based off of these frequencies. So if a control is due for audit or assessment, my team can get an email, or we can create a ticket for it. The final part of the System Actions page is the SSP reports, and this feature is actually so popular we gave it its own page. We have the ability to automatically generate system security plan reports using the information that's in QCompliance. At the top here, we see our current system SSP data. It's telling us are our ODPs set, are the implementation statements set, are the control origination set. So I can see that information, and if I want to, I can always update this in order to make sure that it's set the way that I want it to be. And then I can scroll down and I can see all the previous SSP reports that I've generated. And if I want to generate a new one, I can select a template. We have FedRAMP Moderate and High as templates as well as a default template. And then I just click the green button. And it's going to generate a Word document that has all the information that we know about the system in QCompliance in this Word document. I can download this document. I can share it with people who don't have access to QCompliance. But I can look at this Word document. I can see the system attributes here. I see the hardware inventory. So these are the assets that make up this system. I see the authorized software here, blacklisted software, and then I see the details of the controls. So AC2, which we were looking at before, needs to be audited every 365 days, assessed every 90 days, and that monitoring frequency is set to 1 day, which is why it's on the ConMon dashboard. I see the audit and assessment findings for the control. I see the control requirements with the organization-defined parameters. I see the supplemental guidance. I even see the implementation statements that are related to the control. We provide more reporting than just that. For example, we have a security controls traceability matrix. This is going to show us a point in time how we're doing with our implementations, our test cases, assessments, and audits. And I can export this to CSV and share it as well. Being that this is Splunk, most of our panels and dashboards can be exported and shared. We actually provide a number of reports out of the box under our summary reports section, where you can take a look by system or by organization for different summaries. This is also where we provide our exportable reports for EMAS. If you use EMAS, we can integrate with it. We can either import your EMAS information into QCompliance, or we can export the QCompliance information out to EMAS. We can do that with POAMs, we can do that with test procedures, we can also do that with CCI level audits and assessments. All it takes is clicking on the Generate POAM report to do that for POAMs, and it creates an Excel file that we can share with EMAS. Or for test procedures, CCI level assessments, or CCI level audits, we can create that in this panel as well. Finally, we'll take a little bit of a look at the configuration of QCompliance. We're not going to walk through the entire configuration menu because there's a lot here. One thing I do want to show is control library management. This is where we handle our controls, especially our custom controls. So I can select a control library here, and here I'm looking at some custom controls that we built out. So I have this custom control for 80 privileged groups. It says to monitor membership and privileged groups. If I click on Edit, I'm going to see what the control description is. I would see if there's any organization-defined parameters. I would also see if there's any supplemental guidance. And I can add technical evidence to custom controls as well. If I clicked on Select Visuals, it's going to show me what visualizations are already associated with this control, changes to admin groups. And then I can search the hundreds of visualizations that we have built in out of the box, search by keyword and find ones that might be relevant. And if I want to add them, I just click the box. This is also how you would add your own custom visualizations to an out-of-the-box control. So for example, if I use the pivot command to create an account management related control that I want to associate with control AC2, I can click on Select Visuals for AC2, and it will show me which visualizations are already there, and then I can search for additional visualizations that I might want to associate with this and just check the box to add it to the control. This is also where we do the system management. This is where we set up the system itself. Here we have an additional tool which is new. If we click on Manage, we can actually do a system migration. This will help you migrate from 853 Rev 4 to 853 Rev 5, so you don't have to do it manually. This is where we set the compliance granularity to either control or CCI level. We can set a baseline. For NSS, we can set a low moderate or high for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. For NIST, we can select which revision we want, and low, moderate, or high for the impact level. We can also apply overlays of controls, which will apply the specific controls we need to fulfill that mandate. So in terms of classified information, we have specific controls that need to be applied to our system. This is where we have the system attributes. And this is also where we monitor the assets that make up our system. So because a system is a collection of assets, it's important to have some tools in order to maintain that asset inventory. And we give you 3 different tools to do it. The first one is this GUI. We can search for assets, and if we find one we want to add, we just check the box and click on Add Asset. We can upload a CSV file, and that will append or overwrite the current asset inventory. And then finally, the most dynamic way to do it is with a system tag, which is basically a Splunk query which looks for the asset information in your Splunk environment and dynamically adds it to the asset inventory as machines come and go. So that way you're not having to manually update your asset inventory every time a machine powers on or powers off. The final page we're going to look at today in QCompliance is our control monitoring coverage dashboard. This is what we often refer to as a health check for QCompliance. So if I select my control library, it's going to tell me which of my controls have visuals, and of the ones that have visuals, which ones have data. So here I see the gray controls. They don't have any visualizations, so I'm going to filter them out. Now I can see which controls have visualizations, and of the ones that have visualizations, which ones have data. So for example, AC204, all my visualizations have data. Everything looks good here. But AC202, a couple of my visualizations are missing data. So I can click on the name of the visualization in order to get more details on it. In this case, we're looking for recently created temporary accounts. The description gives me some important information. We're only looking for accounts where the days active is less than 50 days. So now I know to look and see if I actually have any of those type of accounts in my system to begin with. If I know I have that data in my system, it's going to tell me what data models and indexes I'm looking in. So am I looking in the right place for this type of information? It's also going to tell me which fields and tags I'm looking for. So am I looking for the right thing? I can use this information and work with my Splunk admin in order to help determine why my visualization doesn't have data. If that information is even in Splunk to begin with, do we need to ingest a new source of data, or do I just need to look in a different place or add a tag to the data so that it gets tagged appropriately? So that's just a quick overview of QCompliance. We could really spend at least a half a day in QCompliance going through all the different features of it. We didn't even get into all of the executive overview or all of the compliance overview pages, such as the domain overviews or the POAM overview. But now we want to take a look at Q-Audit. And this is going to be much faster to go through because Q-Audit is all about ICS 500-27. The intelligence community standard that determines which events you should audit. So while the NIST 853 controls say you need to have an audit policy, ICS 500-27 says this is what your audit policy should be. It's really considered a gold standard, and it's required for classified networks. So the first thing we look at is our data summary page. We want to make sure that we're actually auditing everything that we need to be auditing. Do we have our host, source types, and users? Are we bringing data in? Do we see what's going on? From there, we've broken down the auditable events into 8 different event families. We'll take a look at one event family, admin access and escalation. This is the Linux sudo command or the Windows run as administrator command. I'm going to select my system, and it's going to show me the data behind it. I can check the audit records to see if somebody's been taking a look at this. I can see top users and processes with privilege executions, successful and failed admin logins and privilege executions on historic trends. I see failed privilege executions by user, recent admin events, and here in the middle I actually see anomalous events. We're using Splunk's built-in anomalous event detection to look for events that have a very small probability of occurring and flagging them. So here, just like on any of the other visualizations, If I want to see more information, I just click on it to see the events behind it. This is showing me what this user did, what process they ran. And if I want to look into it a little further, I can copy this user's name and I can go into our user host investigation page. This page lets us investigate without having to write Splunk searches. So I look at my system, see the system as a whole, and then I'm just going to paste in this user's name, and I can see exactly what this user has done in terms of admin or root level access, application initializations, authentication events, and I can click on the panel beneath it and click Submit to see the actual raw events behind it. So I can see all this information. I can sort by status and look for the failures that he's had on special logons. And we tie all these events together in real-time monitoring page. This is where we look at the events as they come in. We update this page every 30 seconds, showing us alerts that have been fired, recent events, and we can see all this information, like I said, updated every 30 seconds, see what the most recent events are, and we give all these events a score. So we have a risk summary page so we can see who's the riskiest user and what's the riskiest host. I like to look over the past week. I'm going to select my system, and it's going to tell me who the riskiest user is and what the riskiest host is. In this case, every day the riskiest user was Arnold, and the riskiest host was the domain controller. I can see this broken down by event, top users by score, top hosts by score, and I can click on the scoring to see why they're getting that score. So in the case of user Arnold, he's getting a point for each change analysis event that's going on. If I want to see what the actual event is, I can click on the bracket to see the raw event. And if this is something suspicious, something Arnold shouldn't be doing, I can create a ticket for it. If it is something that is in his purview, I can change the scoring so he doesn't get as many points for it. So that's Q-Audit. You've now seen both of our apps, QCompliance and Q-Audit. As I said, if you have any questions about it, please email us at sales@Qmulos.com. We're more than happy to do a deeper dive, to talk about it further, answer any questions, and we can even set you up with a sandbox account where you can look in our own demo environment, click on things, and see how everything works. Thank you for your time.